Hey everyone, this is Rock from StationTheSky.com, and this one is going to be very deep and personal. I'm not going to use too many videos, but I'm going to try my best to just stick to the message because it's really important for a lot of us Christians out here who are trying to navigate this world, this secular society where so many of our peers, I'm talking millennials specifically, so many of our peers have turned their back on God, right? I've been called arrogant for most of my life. I've been called arrogant, I've been called judgmental, and it's about time I addressed it because back on April 4th, 2023, last month, I went to a memorial service that I do every year and to honor Jesus Christ, right? For those who don't know, Jehovah Witnesses, you know how like most people do communion where they drink the wine and bread every Sunday? Well, Jehovah Witnesses, they don't do that. They do it every year on Nisan 14th, to honor the memorial of Jesus Christ dying for us, and I'm not a Jehovah Witness, but I do believe in honoring that tradition. So every year I go. And every year it's amazing. But this past month, on April 4th, 2023, something unexpected happened. I suffered from some kind of emotional or mental breakdown, and I had to leave before it ended. I felt wretched and rotten and guilty and unworthy. And ironically, I believe it all stemmed from this lifelong criticism of being called arrogant. So let's get into it. Now I confess, modesty is not one of my strong points. I get it. It's kind of like how I've been told that I'm too judgmental. However, with being called judgmental, I can truly say, yeah, I am judgmental in a lot of ways. I embrace it. I can accept and defend it. I've done multiple essays and I have videos on it. Feel free to check them out. But arrogance, how can I justify that? Like the Bible's constantly talking about the virtues of being meek and humble. It warns about pride and haughtiness. Jesus himself said that the greatest among you shall be your servant, and whoever humbles himself like a child shall be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So how can arrogant be justified? How can arrogant be a good thing? If people are correct in their criticism of me, in their assessment of me, what do I do? How do I change? Do I even really want to change? So here's what I'm going to do, okay? First, I'm going to explain what happened that night during the memorial service where I had that kind of emotional breakdown. And then I'm going to dive deep into why I'm clearly so insufferably arrogant, okay? On April 4th, 2023, this is Nisan 14, the Jehovah Witnesses held their annual memorial service in celebration of the Lord's Passover meal. It is to honor Christ's sacrificial death for all believers. Again, I'm not a Jehovah Witness, but my parents are. I was raised that since I was the age of 11, right? And ever since I was 11, they took me and my brothers to this annual event. And as an adult, I still believe in honoring that tradition. Usually when I attend the memorial service, I go with someone, right? So you're not just walking in alone. Last year I went with my parents. The years before, I went with the Jehovah Witness family that I befriended some time ago, like when I was 27, 28. This year, 2023, I have a newfound confidence. I'm improving my social skills because I joined a church group. So I decided to go by myself. I trusted that the Jehovah Witnesses would be down to earth and they were welcoming. And that's exactly what happened. I'd never been to this particular Kingdom Hall. For those who don't know, that's the church. That's the building that they call their place of worship. But every brothers refer to the church members there. Every brother I went into, and these are older people, like in their 40s. I'm 36, right? So most people were in their 40s and 50s I locked eyes with. They shook my hands. They introduced themselves with cheerful repose. I must have said, my name is Rock. Hi, my name is Rock, at least 14 times in the span of 3 minutes. And it was cool. I was doing good. I was off to a good start. As the service kicked off, I smiled with nostalgia, right? The place was packed. When I'm saying packed, like people, they brought out chairs in the middle of the foyer, the entrance lobby, because there were so many people, right? There were families, solo visitors like myself. Everyone seemed good and decent and kind, like you didn't detect a hint of evil wickedness in anyone. These were true sheep, members of Christ's flock. And as a speaker from Bethel gave his sermon conveying the significance of Christ's death and how he gave up his perfect life for us, dark thoughts began to sink in, right? This is just a curse of who I am as an individual, where I am very much an intellectual. I am a deep thinker, right? And I'm listening to the speaker talk about Christ and Jesus Christ dying for us. I'm suddenly thinking about why we have sin in the first place. Satan, Adam, Eve. Because of them, everyone I love will die. And because of Satan's ongoing influence in this wicked society, and you see it's getting worse, where more and more people are turning their back on God's word. A lot of my peers, my coworkers, my loved ones who have given into that influence to reject Christ. Oh, we don't need him. We don't need God's word here. There's no place for God in blank. Because of that, I know there's only one path to salvation. That's through Christ. So when you reject Christ, you reject life. And I can't help but think to myself, all of this is Satan's fault. So as we read the scriptures about Jesus Christ's death, being nailed to a cross and strung up to suffer, I'm suddenly thinking, this is deep, but I'm suddenly thinking about my cousin who was so recently murdered, right? The loss is still fresh in my mind. For those who don't know, I had a baby cousin who was 26, but she was a baby, I've known her since she was a baby. She was like a little sister to me. I loved her and cherished her so much, and she was murdered last December. So it's still fresh in my mind. The funeral happened this past January, so it's still, the pain of loss is still fresh. The hate and rage is still there. And while I've been able to ignore it for many months, I haven't forgiven. That's something I need to work on, but the forgiveness isn't there yet. The need for vengeance is still strong. It's always strong, okay? That hate and rage, I know it sounds cliche, especially for young people. Hate and rage, you see in the movies and TV shows, where they use it to, Batman, to get vengeance. But the truth is, deep down, I have always kind of relished the anger in my heart. That's not a compliment. That's not a bragging thing. That's something I need to work on. That is the plank in my eye. Okay. The thing is with me, compliments don't come like the sunrise. As I'm gonna get into later, compliments, it's scarce for people like me. I'm pretty sure you've felt the same way, especially for us men, where people don't compliment. They don't pat you in the back, say, "Good boy, you did good." If that's scarce in your life, you really do. I really have, I've relied on the injustices, the need for vengeance, the need to just get back at people, get back at the world, to get back at Satan. I use that as motivation to light a fire in my heart to work hard. Each memory is like a scoop of coal in the boiler when it comes to train, it just keeps me going. And every time I hear or read about the innocent, pain and suffering, just recently, there was a car that mowed down 8 people in Mexico or Texas, civilians caught in crossfire, some lunatic going on a rampage and killing kids who had nothing to do with whatever BS they got going on in their lives. All of it just fuels me because it makes me upset. It makes me angry. All right, I know I shouldn't hold on to that, but again, it's just always been one of the main sources of fuel in my life, especially in the world where I don't have the positive encouragement, people patting me on the back that a lot of you see on TV shows. I'm gonna get into, family members of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where everyone, go for whatever you want to do. We support you and believe you. I didn't have that, but I did have negativity. And at the age of 17, my drama teacher basically encouraged me to flip a switch in my brain to use that negative energy as motivation to succeed. Okay, I wouldn't recommend that for everyone. If I have children, I'm going to definitely be a positive influence and teach them so they don't have to rely on the negativity. But for those of us who don't have that, you see all the times with football players who, work their butt off because they were born in poverty, so they keep that drive alive in their heart so they don't ever go back to that. And even though I do have that hate and animosity in my heart, and I do use it positively and constructively to do good things, I don't think I can come into the kingdom filled with such animosity, And more than anything, a question that preys in my mind ever since my cousin was killed, I asked myself, do I hate Satan more than I love God? If I do, is that understandable? Will God accept that? Could it be that my hatred towards Satan and sin really is righteous indignation? I don't know. I'm still haven't figured out all the answers. All I know is that I'm sitting there in that memorial service, seething, barely containing myself in the middle of the service as the brothers come through each aisle and they pass platters of unleavened bread representing Christ's body, and then they pass the glasses of wine representing Christ's blood in the new covenant. As the brothers finished going through the aisles, there was a moment of silence for about 3 minutes. Silence for me is deafening. You give me a moment of silence, guess what? This boy is gonna reflect. And in that moment of reflection, my thoughts just got worse. I just kept thinking to myself, filled with all that hate and rage, I don't belong here. I am a wolf in sheep's clothing. I am corrupt. My thoughts are violent. I am dangerous to these people. I've been called arrogant, and in that moment, I'm thinking about myself. So yeah, clearly I must be arrogant, so self-centered. I should have felt joy that Christ conquered death through resurrection, but it enraged me that he had to go through so much pain and suffering and die in the first place. Humans, it is hard to love them. I thought I did, but I think I'm failing at the second greatest commandment. I know we are all flawed. I know we all fall short, but in that moment, I felt like I was just surrounded by those who were destined for heaven while I deserved nothing short of the deepest pits of hell. Maybe all this time where I'm writing essays and trying my best to be a good Christian, maybe all this time, I'm just a bad guy pretending to be good. As all rose to begin the closing song, I mean, I had a tear in my eye. I already wiped my eye multiple times. I'm sitting in the front row of this big congregation, so I'm like 6'3", 200-something pound black guy just wiping his eyes. It's not a good look. I know, Rock, you shouldn't be concerned with how everyone thinks. That's the kind of guy I am. I do concern myself with perception, right? I wish I didn't, but I do. So as all rose to begin this closing song, I tried to just close it out. I told myself, Rock, just get through it, all right? You're almost done. You're almost done. God knows I tried to make it through that song, but I couldn't. All right, because I knew as soon as I finished the song, I'd have to face this congested hall of love and fellowship, and I didn't have the strength to put on a performance and act like everything's okay, because it's not. All right, it wasn't. So I picked up my Bible and I made my way for the exit. My vision was blurry. My eyes were glossed with tears. People were everywhere in my peripheral, but I could see the floor in front of me. So I just kept my eyes to the floor and I followed the path to the front doors. Two older white men, brothers of this congregation, they followed me out. And it was endearing, but by then I was just a mess. I was crying uncontrollably as if I was back at my cousin's funeral. It was pathetic. "Hey brother, you alright?" one said. "Yeah, I'm okay. It was a good speech. You guys are good people," I said, averting my eyes. The other chimed in with, "Hey, I was hoping to speak with you afterwards because you had some good questions about Good Friday. Why don't you stick around and we can speak after?" And I'm crying and I'm like, I really don't want people to see me like this. I chuckled at that. "Here, let me give you my card. Please, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'd be happy to talk to you," the other one said. And I took his card and I thanked them so much. Honestly, these are good people. God bless them. They were really nice. But I had to get out of there. And the whole 5-minute drive home, I just kept crying, angry that I was crying. I kept saying out loud, "Sorry, I am so sorry." And I just kept saying, "Please forgive me," over and over again, as if Jesus was in the backseat of my vehicle, my Jeep. I got home and I prayed. I thanked God for the day and I asked for his guidance and understanding. Mind you, everything I'm saying up to this point, everything I typed at this point, I'm giving you my thoughts in hindsight. Because in the moment, when I was at the congregation, when I was with those Jehovah's Witnesses, I really didn't understand what was going on. All I knew is that I felt guilty and unworthy. But why? I want you to know that since then, I have sought counsel from plenty of Christians, including my older brother. I am still a work in progress. I still have the plank in my eye that I'm working on. I still haven't overcome the loss of my cousin. I still got the hatred in my heart, but I'm working on it. I don't have all the answers about what happened that night, but there's one thing I'm about to settle once and for all. My arrogance. Being called arrogant. I need to get over that. I need to understand why I'm called arrogant. I need to understand if I am arrogant, I need to fix that, okay? So let's get into it. Let's hammer that home. So let's recap one thing that happened that night during the memorial service, okay? What did I tell you? Okay, I said I felt unworthy of being amongst this congregation where I thought everyone was better than me. I felt like I didn't measure up. I was crying. I'm like, dude, you guys are great, but I just couldn't be there. Does that sound like an arrogant man to you? Here's the definition of arrogance. Everything that I've said so far, does that sound like arrogance? Or does that sound like humility? Does that sound like wretchedness? Like this is a man who feels like he could be doing better and he is nowhere near where he should be. Here's what I think is going on. Essentially, it's what Jesus Christ said in John chapter 15. Starting in verse 18, it says, "If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you are of the world will love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you." Just like the world thinks it's good to have sex before marriage, and while the Bible explains that it's actually bad and sexually immoral, I think that this world has a twisted habit of labeling something by its own standard of right and wrong, not God's standard. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus Christ gives one of his most beautiful sermons, and one of the Beatitudes is, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." This blog post, I have the link down below, is an amazing account of what it means to be humble and exude humility by God's standards. They write, "Humility is an essential characteristic for followers of Christ. The Bible defines humility as the fear of the Lord." That's in Proverbs 22:4. Its root is in the Latin word humus, meaning of the earth. To be humble is to be face down in the dirt, submitting to the authority of another, without personal pride. This is the Christian's proper position before the Lord. When it comes to submitting myself to Christ's teachings and the Word of God, I do not believe I am arrogant. Instead, I hereby accuse the world of being arrogant for thinking they don't need God in their lives, for thinking they know better than God, for thinking that all who put their trust in God are fools, while they themselves are actually the smart and successful ones. I think that is arrogant. I think that the world is arrogant. Back in 2020, I published 10 essays called The Top 10 Ways the Bible Changed My Life. One of the posts details how reading the Bible changed my priorities. Feel free to check out, I have the link down below. All right, it's one of my favorite essays because in it, I explain how it took 2 years to really shed off my old self and submit myself to Christ. This was not easy, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about changing direction, changing goals, where I invested years of my life in pursuit of being an author, being a writer. That was my dream, that was my goal, right? When you sacrifice so many years to pursuing that craft, it's not easy to say, you know what, I need to stop this. I need to take a step back and, work on putting God first, not publishing first. Okay, this requires faith and a humble heart. It's quite similar to that of Abraham, who was told to uproot his life and venture to a land not known to him. Abraham put his trust in God and did as God instructed. Likewise, I put my trust in God and gradually let go of my own worldly ambitions, the money, the fame, the pedestalizing of women, submitting myself to the idea that God knows what's best for me. So when people say, oh, you're just a misogynist for wanting a wife who believes in submitting to her husband, maybe now you'll understand that I see those people as individuals who have not yet put their faith in God's word the way I have. Check out Ephesians 5. This is what the scriptures say, that wives submit to their husbands and husbands are to love and honor their wives. Thus, it makes sense why I take a pass on those ladies, why I see them as not yet ready for my commitment. We are not equally yoked, and because of that, I am arrogant. Even other Christians who only know bits and pieces of the Bible, they might see me as arrogant because I'm not tolerant and accepting the way the world wants me to be. I don't join pride parades, I don't engage in the hookup culture, and you won't catch me embracing cultures that promote the breakdown of families through willful ignorance and its rejection of Christ. I'm not perfect, as you've heard in this video, as you clearly read. I clearly got problems I need to work on, but whatever darkness I may have in my heart, my desire to do what's good in God's eyes seemed to be stronger. It's an honor. I know God's always watching. I know the multitude of angels are always watching, and every time I choose God over the world, I believe that they're smiling down on me, and to me, that brings me pleasure, that brings me joy. An example of what I mean? Well, recently it was implied to me, one of my communities I'm part of, that he implied that because I'm not married yet and I'm a philosopher and I write, and I basically put God first, as opposed to, he implied that I may be one of the have-nots because women didn't or don't choose me, right? I reply with this: are you sure that women didn't choose me or I'm not choosing them? God knows I do want to have a wife and I want to have children, but I believe in doing it God's way by getting married first. I have had plenty of opportunities to land a girl of my dreams if only I had given in to the temptation of sex. That can't be overstated. There are a lot of Christians, single Christians out there who are struggling with singlehood or being single because they don't give in to the hookup culture, right? We know men and women pass on people like us because, hey, we're not giving it up on the first date. We're not giving it up before marriage, right? And a lot of people, they can't wait. A lot of people who have given into temptation and have had sex during their teenage years, they're almost like a slave to it. I personally dated a very strong Christian she was Jehovah's Witness, and every time I picked up the phone to talk to her, and she knew I'm waiting to marriage, and she respected that. But because she had sex during her teenage years, it was difficult for her to basically, I'm not saying I'm irresistible, but yeah, it was difficult for her because she had sex. She couldn't wait. And for me, because I haven't had sex and I do strive to put God first, and I do have that God-given discipline to actually sleep in a bed with an actual girlfriend where I've had intimate moments where things were heating up, but before it got too far, I resisted every time to keep my virginity intact. That conviction it shows I'm clearly not easy to break. And a lot of people, when they hear these testimonies from people like me, unless you're inspired, where you're the kind of person where you say, wow, that's inspiring. A lot of people who have given in, they do see me as arrogant. They see me like, oh, keep that to yourself, or you're bragging, or you're flexing on us, or you're throwing shade on us. Instead of just saying, that's awesome, I should have did that. It's all good, man. We all make mistakes. Now, what are you going to do from here on out? When the world sees things like this, it's understandable for them to look at people like us and say, who do you think you are? Do you think you're all that? You think you're too good to do as we do? When in Rome, when in Rome. Hey, join our customs. Do you think you're better than us? It's understandable for them to think that. Think about Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. When the rest of the assembly in Babylon were bowing down to the king of Babylon's image, but they refused to. Can you imagine what those people were thinking? Who do y'all think y'all are? Arrogance. Think about Mordecai, who refused to pay homage to Haman in the book of Esther. Haman plotted against the Jews. Mordecai refused to bow to him. Who does Mordecai think he is? Arrogant. Think of the young shepherd boy David, who dared to accept Goliath's challenge at the risk of his own life. Can you imagine? David's just a shepherd boy. Can you imagine the people around him? Not just the Philistines, but his own brothers, other Israelites. They looked at young David. Can you imagine them saying, "Dude, who does David think he is? This arrogant boy. Why does he think that he'll succeed against Goliath where so many have failed?" Arrogance. Consider John the Baptist, who dared to speak out against King Herod for marrying his brother's wife, and he was eventually jailed and eventually killed. Can you imagine what the people were thinking about him? That's the king. You John the Baptist, you're just some wannabe prophet coming out of the wilderness. Who do you think you are? Arrogance. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that every time I was called arrogant is because I was choosing God over the world, but most of my recent criticism, I'm 36, right? Most of my recent criticism leading up to the night of the memorial when I had that breakdown, it did stem from how I choose to live my life, how I view my secular peers, and my selective, cautious attitude towards marriage. The woman who called me arrogant is an older woman who's known me since I was 23, so I respect her opinion. She knows me. I've confided in her. She's like a second mother to me, and I really do value her opinion. For her to say things like, "You know what, Rock, you're arrogant. You know, you're really arrogant," or "You want a woman who's inferior to you." These are true words that she did say about me. I really did take them to heart, and I considered whether or not she might be right about me. Again, does that sound like an arrogant person, right? What arrogant person hears criticism about themselves and then thinks to himself, you may be right. But that's me. I was called arrogant. I was accused of, "Oh, you know what? You just want a woman who's inferior to you." And I didn't say, "No, you're wrong. Whatever, I'm not going to listen to that." I actually listened to what she said about me, and I thought to myself, is she right? Am I arrogant? Do I really just want a woman who's inferior to me? The truth is, sometimes I really do think I am the smartest person in the room. People say I shouldn't, but I don't think they understand what I mean. In my 20s, I used to hear the saying, "If you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. If you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room." The logic being, you should surround yourself with people who are better than you, because those are the people you want to learn from to help you grow. To this day, I still kind of live by the philosophy, which is why I joined this church group, and everyone that I associate with, they're people that I want to learn from. They have aspects or qualities that I think I want to improve on. Or it's someone who sees something in me that they want to learn from me. And I love those people because it's always fascinating. You can see their eyes light up. I love that. But sometimes, just sometimes, I end up with my secular peers who espouse worldviews and preach indulgences that go against the Bible. In those moments, part of me can't help but feel like I am better than those people. Not superior, but better off. Like one who heeded the warnings that left Pompeii before Vesuvius erupted. For those who don't get the analogy, again, I believe that we're all going to be judged. And if you rejected Christ, you're basically rejecting life. I don't dwell on being the smartest person in the room. I don't celebrate it. And I don't personally see it as arrogance on my part, because even though I feel like I may be better off in the long run, meaning the kingdom of heaven is my reward for doing what's good in God's eyes, for now, I do still have to endure this world. It is incredibly lonely when you live a life where it feels like you're the only one who's playing by the rules, right? You see everyone else having fun and doing things that you know you could do if only you abandoned God's word. That's not cool. It's a rotten thing to have to go through alone, which is why I encourage everyone to join a church or a congregation to lend you support, because you can feed off of each other, right? You can encourage each other. You're not alone anymore. But for the longest time, I didn't have that. It was just me. You want to smile and you want to be happy for your peers, for your brothers, but when you know they're not living by God's teachings and yet they seem to prosper, you feel like you're the one who's being foolish, right? You feel like you're the idiot who's missing out for nothing. It's not easy to keep your chin up and keep your eyes in the kingdom of heaven while having to endure all of that. You know, the social media, commercials, TV, movies, magazines, music, it's everywhere. The world is designed for the wicked to prosper and reject Christ's teachings. Just as John 15 said, the world accepts its own. Remember Tim Tebow kneeling on the field? Oh, the audacity. But Colin Kaepernick can kneel for his perceived social justice, and the world's all for that. I try to have compassion for people who don't know Christ. I really do. But very often, their unfortunate situations in life are the result of their own choices that were not smart. Hence, it is my belief that all Christians who put their faith in Christ, they are the smartest people alive. If that makes me arrogant, I am sorry. I try not to show it. I still treat everyone with love and respect. But when it comes to those who willfully reject Christ's teachings, I confess, it is almost like an involuntary muscle to see that what they're doing is stupid. Okay, I know people want to slight me for that, but when you read the Bible every day, it's kind of like martial arts, okay? For those who don't know martial arts or any kind of fighting technique, when you practice 1,000 punches a day, when you practice that same punch over and over again, your muscles, they're going to be fine-tuned and conditioned to strike with proper technique without having to think, hesitate, or worry about what you should do if you're ever in a real fight. You train for it. In the same way, when you read the Bible every day, applying the Bible teachings to your life, you're conditioning yourself to develop a stronger sense of morality according to God's standards, not the world's. You immediately know when something's wrong because you've read it over and over again how God feels about things like sexual immorality or theft or murder or apostasy. Regardless of the excuses, regardless of the reason why people are committing these sins and doing what's bad, by mere observation you know. Doesn't mean they're bad people overall, but the actions are bad. Perhaps that's why so many dating coaches tell people to leave their Christianity at the door when it comes to dating, because I get it. There is a bit of pressure when you're dealing with someone who lives by a code of morality. When you have a heart set on doing whatever you want as long as it makes you happy, you're probably going to be frustrated with a man like me who denies himself for the sake of Christ. It's going to be frustrating. So that's what I have when it comes to the Bible. That's what I have about arrogance, and I think there's two different types of arrogance. I think there's arrogance when it comes to the world and arrogance in God's eyes. I strive to do what's good in God's eyes, so the world's, interpretation of calling me arrogant, I have to shrug it off, right? I try myself to be humble. I try my best to keep a humble heart and have compassion. That is something I'm still working on, but I don't think I'm arrogant. There's one other thing I want to explain before I close it out, because I am a Christian now, but I haven't always been. I have always had the Christian foundation in me, but I didn't really pick up the Bible and read it, and commit it to my life until I was like the age of 27, 28, okay? So even back then, I was called arrogant. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, Rock, well, if you weren't a Christian back then, but you were called arrogant, clearly there's something wrong with you, okay? So allow me to take this time to explain why I think I was called arrogant. And perhaps if you understand, you won't be so quick to see it as necessarily a bad thing, all right? I kind of alluded to it early in the video where it's all about, because you know how people say, oh, so you need compliments, you need validation, you need that. So, I mean, what choice do you have, right? If people don't give it to you, but you strive to work hard and have goals for yourself, how else are you going to keep the confidence and self-esteem up to accomplish that goal, right? I used to have a girlfriend who said, oh, so you need compliments? I don't need it, but I would like it. Silly, right? Like, they act like it's so, this world, I swear to God, man, like, they act like it's so bad, like, to be proud of yourself when you accomplish things. Oh, don't let it go to your head. They say this stuff. And I think all of it stems from the fact that they don't see themselves. It's a deflection. It's a defense mechanism, right? They see you and they're jealous of you and they want to bring you down instead of, being inspired to reach up to you where they perceive you to be. Okay. So let me get into it. When I was a kid, I had a talent for singing. Like, I could sing really well back then. I'm not going to sing for you right now. I'm sorry. I don't want to ruin that. Okay. Back then, as a kid, my memory was one of my strongest talents. I can memorize melodies, I hum the tunes, I even perform for neighbors who stopped over. Back then, I learned very early on, I like entertaining people. Class clown, oh, he's just a class clown. There's a reason why. It's not because I want to be disrespectful in class, but I like entertaining my peers. I think I may have been inspired by Michael Jackson being the child star that he was, but I truly believe because I had that talent as a kid, I was destined for greatness. That is if everyone else around me believed in me. When I was in 4th grade, I wanted to enter my school's talent show. My mom wouldn't let me. She was afraid of my feelings getting hurt. I'm not gonna lie, that kind of crushed me. I was asking myself, I'm like, what are you saying? Are you saying I can't sing? Do I lack the talent? Why won't you help me get better? This is what I want to do. I also had a talent for, and it was bad about that talent show. Even though my mom said I couldn't enter it, I had to go to school and I watched the talent show. And dude, I saw other kids. Like, even if I lacked the talent in my mom's eyes, the other kids didn't do much better. Like, they butchered their songs. I'm thinking to myself, it was so infuriating. I'm like, dude, I would have killed this talent show. Like, I was so much better than all of my peers, man. But I didn't get a chance to prove it. That's just one thing, okay? Another talent that I had was acting and martial arts, okay? I can memorize scenes and I acted them out to entertain my brothers and friends, and I was good at it. I can mimic voices, and I loved it. When it comes to martial arts, I used to get bullied before the 2nd grade. When we moved to Texas, I used to watch the Street Fighter video game arcades, and I was able to memorize the moves, and I would practice them in the backyard, and I was good at it. I think there's a skill called assimilation, right? Like, if I go to Boston right now, And if I hang around those Boston people for at least a week, I'm gonna pick up on that accent. I'm gonna be talking like a Bostonian. That's just it's just a thing I do. Again, my parents shut me down. My mom threw in my video games because she thought it was too violent. In Georgia, this is 5th grade through probably senior high school, I grew up a big kid, always one of the biggest in my classroom. So naturally, I wanted to play football or sports, because put my talents to work, and it would have. My life would have been different if I joined the football team, but my mom and my stepdad were against it. They were afraid of me getting hurt. And to add insult to injury, again, I was forced to go and watch the thing that I wanted to do. My mom used to say, oh, let's go to football games. Why? Well, let's just get us out of the house and do something. I'm like, but I want to play football. This is painful, but this is the crap that I had to endure. Detect a pattern? Okay, the TV shows like Family Matters and Fresh Prince, it was all fantasies. In those shows, you see families and friends encouraging and supporting each other, the characters' endeavors, instilling them with confidence by complimenting them, rooting for them, cheering them on. That's what families did. That's what I thought they did. I didn't have that. My family didn't do that. That's not to say my mom and my dad and stepdad didn't ever encourage me, but they always encouraged me to do whatever they wanted to do, which was to be a Jehovah Witness, which I didn't want, okay? So can you imagine living years in that house? If no one cheers you on, if there's no one to root for you and instill you in confidence, is a child not allowed to believe in himself? Was I not allowed to believe in myself? I didn't even realize this until I was 25. I was pursuing my Colombian paramour, and I told her, you know what? I noticed you haven't said not one kind word to me. You never compliment me or praise me for anything. You never, like anything. And then she said this, well, you're always complimenting yourself, so there's no need for me to do it. And as much as that stung, she was right. I was upset that she said that, but she was right. I did compliment myself, especially in my 20s. It just sucks that she never understood why. My peers don't understand why. Back then, if you talk to me and you ask me, Rock, what's going on? What are you up to? Chances are I tell you, I'm working on a novel. I just finished a short story that I think it's really great what I'm working on, and I can't wait to publish them. Now, all of that sounds like I'm bragging, but that's only because it's unusual to most of my peers, right? If you ask them about their weekends, they'd tell you, oh, we went out to the club, or we went dancing, or we took the boat out, we got drunk, we got wasted over the weekend. It wouldn't sound like they're bragging because everyone was doing it. But for me to say something like, oh, I got this title copyrighted at the Library of Congress. There goes Rock again, he's bragging about his accomplishments, and it's like, I didn't see it. You asked me how I'm doing, I'm told you how I'm doing. Do you want me to fake the modesty? Do you want me to pretend to act like I'm not doing anything that I believe in? Here's 4 reasons why I had to have a supreme level of confidence in myself when it comes to being a writer, okay? Because in my 20s, I did dedicate my life to being a published author. Here's 4 reasons why I needed to have that supreme level of confidence. Number 1, being an author is a solitary occupation unless you're blessed with a partner or a spouse who helps you. It takes a strong belief in yourself to keep doing what you're doing, right? Because number 2, the success doesn't happen overnight. Every day you're churning out pages, you're only chipping away at a project that may not be completed for years or not at least months, right? So your confidence is what keeps you banking on the idea that you will succeed. You need to believe in yourself because it takes days, weeks, months where you're still working on the same project, right? There is no one, and that leads to point number 3. There is no spectators, right? There's no one seeing you. Oh, wow, look at your pages you turned out. You keep that to yourself. Unless you tell someone, no one but God knows that you're working hard, all right? Unless you promote your work and you post on Facebook, hey, I just finished a chapter, everyone. No one knows what you've done. And chances are, even when you do that, no one cares because they're jealous. You're doing something unusual. You have a goal for yourself that's very lofty. Most people aren't trying to do what you're doing, so it sounds like you're bragging. It sounds like you're saying you're better than everyone, but that's not what you're doing. You just wanted to share because it's a solitary thing, right? None of this is easy, but I did it, right? It makes sense that my peers would call me arrogant because I had to have the audacity to believe that one day my hard work would pay off. By the time I turned 30, sad to say, I got to the point where I stopped telling people I'm a writer. I didn't even realize. It just phased out of me, right? Because it's like people they crapped all over that. And it wasn't until I was 32 when I was visiting my dad, he was introducing me to some of the members of his church, and they're like, hey, so what do you do? And I told them, yeah, I work for a marketing company in Tampa. And my dad's like, and I said, yeah, and I also work part-time in a law firm. Again, my dad's like, and I just stared puzzled for a moment. And then I chuckled and I said, oh yeah, and I'm a writer. I write books and short stories and essays. He's like, there you go. That's exactly it. You're a writer. And that really made me smile, almost wistfully, right? Even now, just thinking about it, I can't help but thank God for just blessing me with such a strong spirit in a world where compliments and encouragement, it's not only scarce, but its effects are ephemeral, right? I wish I could latch onto the many compliments and words of encouragement I have received, because it's not like no one heard about what I was doing and said, Rock, we're really proud of you. They have. Especially the same person who called me arrogant, over the years, she's seen me work my butt off. She's seen me go from 320 pounds to 220. She's seen me publish and write essays or write books and, have the hard copies in my hands. So she's seen the fruits of my labor and she's commended me. She said, good job. My own boss, the attorney, he compared me to Hemingway. That's a huge compliment, but humans, we're very forgetful. The feelings of, I did it, that's very ephemeral. Sad to say, that's just something, so it's not like, I wish I could latch onto those words of positive encouragement and just carry that day after day, but it's tough to do that. Meanwhile, negativity, like the negative feelings, there's a sad meme that says, if you want a woman to remember you, treating her like a queen and being a nice person to her, she'll forget about that. But you treat her like crap and be toxic to her, she'll be thinking about you for years. It's sad to say, but humans, we are kind of like that. But I think it's kind of the reason why we read the Bible every day. I already know what's in it. I've already read it twice, but it's good to be constantly reminded of God's love, His generosity, His power, and Christ's loving example of forgiveness. Being strung up on the cross, and He said, forgive them, they know not what they do. That is powerful, right? Whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm angry about, can you imagine being strung up on the cross and still having the strength, the conviction to say, God, forgive these people, they know not what they do. That's what we need to be reminded of, because again, we're forgetful. Anyways, I hope I made my case. I thank you guys for watching. I thank you for reading if you're watching from stageandscott.com. That's where all my works are published, and a lot of stuff that I don't do videos on, I've also published there. So, I just wanted to share, okay? Thank you.